Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Thank you so much, Aimee, for coming on the Always Andy's Mom podcast and sharing Eliza with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, very good. So do you want to just start out by telling us all about your daughter, Eliza?
I would love to. It's my favorite subject.
I know, right?
So Eliza was born April 12th, 2016, or 2012. And she was perfect when she was born. I had a great pregnancy. Everything was fine. We had tried for a few years to get pregnant. So it was quite a, culmination of a lot of things just going exactly right. So we were so excited when she was born. Pretty soon after she was born, I think we started to notice that something wasn't exactly right. So during that time, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so she was about 5 months old when I was diagnosed. And so I had to do chemo and radiation and all that. And so it was sort of like this time period of, wait, is it me? Is it something really wrong? So we sort of just muddled through that time. And when she was about 16 months old, I noticed that she did this weird little thing when she was sitting at the table where she would sort of flinch. And at first I didn't think it was anything. And then we took her to the doctor and found out it was a seizure. So a myoclonic seizure. So took her to neurology. They looked at her. Yes, she has epilepsy. She's having seizures all day. So it was this sort of rude, awakening of wait, something is wrong with my child. Right. And I think I didn't know much about epilepsy at the time. I was like, oh, people sometimes have seizures. I didn't know how serious that it could be. I didn't know that it affected development. And so she wasn't talking. And she had just some developmental delays. And then she was diagnosed with autism. So we had all these things happening at once. And so, I guess it's just a mom thing. I am not special. Any mom would do it. You just dig in and just try to figure things out. And, getting a diagnosis of anything for your child is scary. And especially your first child, you have no idea. And when it's something like autism or epilepsy, there's also this sort of, you don't know who to reach out to or who to talk to. Finding another parent, it's hard. So, I just sort of, me and my husband just really tried to do whatever we could to be inclusive with other people that, if I found any other parent who had a child with autism, I was like, okay, we're best friends now.
Yeah, right.
You and me.
Right.
So she was the happiest little girl. She was mostly nonverbal, but she was so happy. She would just walk up to anybody and hug them, kiss them. We were in Home Depot one day and she was walking. She would always walk in front of us, just to on a mission. And a lady that worked at Home Depot was standing in one of the aisles and she just walked up to her and she goes, hi, and then hugged her. And the lady was like, you have no idea how much that meant to me. I was having the worst day and I feel so much better. So she brought Eliza one of the little Home Depot apron. It was just super sweet. So she just really made your day when you saw her. She was always smiling. Her favorite things were popcorn and the song Happy. and she loved Frozen, the movie, and she loved pine cones.
I have to tell you, one of Andy's very favorite songs was Happy.
It was?
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Love that song.
Oh, I
That's
mean,
just
it's
sweet.
a good song.
It is a good song.
That's a thing. So yeah, she was amazing because she woke up every day and didn't realize how much harder life was for her than it was for a typical child. And she just really just persevered through everything. She was hospitalized a lot when she was young. She had a hole in her heart that had to be repaired. And the doctor came in before in the pre-op, and he was talking to Eliza, and she understood. I think she understood more than I think she understood more than I thought.
Yeah, more than she got credit for.
Absolutely. So the doctor came in and was talking to her. And before he left, he was like, "Okay, Eliza, we'll see you soon." And she grabbed his hand and just kissed the top of his hand. I was like, my sweet girl. So you can see in her pictures, she's just always just really sweet and happy. And it's when she passed away, it was just, how can this be, this happy, sweet little girl that was just walking around, all of a sudden they're gone.
Yeah.
So
what did happen with Eliza?
So she had been in the hospital that summer. She passed away November 11th, 2016. And the summer before, she had been in the hospital for a 3-week stint in the PICU and then 2 weeks because she had extremely low muscle tone. And so when she would get sick, she was unable to clear her airway properly because she couldn't really cough. And so this was not something I even had, I knew she had low muscle tone because they would always, how you all always check the legs, and I don't know how but and I didn't realize that it affects other parts of you. So the pulmonologist would come in and say, she doesn't clear, and you have to try to get her to cough, but she didn't understand so she was in with double pneumonia numerous times that summer. For long periods of time. She was on a ventilator at one point. And then she kind of was out of the woods, so she was tested for a lot of genetic things that all came back negative, but the doctor said to us, there's a lot of things we don't know. And there probably is something genetic, but we don't know right now, but we could know in 5 years. So she just started to decline. And I don't know if I noticed it while she was here or if now I just see it looking back at pictures and things like that. But there was one day that popped in my mind, is Eliza going to live a long life? And then I just oh my gosh, why would I think that? How could I even think those thoughts? So I was actually going on a girls' trip, and it's funny because it took us forever to pick out the dates to get 10 girls together for our friend who was getting married. Can you imagine, 10 people on a text trying to figure out a weekend that works for everybody. So we settled on November 10th. We were going to leave and go to Vegas. And so I left, I kissed Eliza goodbye. And there's this one moment that I stood at her door and I was like, should I go in? It's so early. I don't want to wake her up because she struggled with falling asleep and staying asleep. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to go in and kiss her. So I go in, I kiss her goodbye, and I left. And then we get to Vegas. And the morning of the 11th. So we were there that day into the night. And the next morning, I was staying with 4 of my girlfriends and my phone rang. And so I hopped up and I was like, oh, it's so early. And why is Aaron calling me so early? And I picked up the phone and I could tell he was crying. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, Eliza's very sick. And I knew immediately. And I just like screamed, is she dead? And he said, yes. And I don't even know, like you see in movies when people find out someone's died and they fall onto the ground. I always would see movies and I'm always like, is that really a thing? And it is. I literally couldn't keep myself up.
Yeah.
I don't really remember a lot after. It was just very chaotic. I was screaming so loud. And my mom had come to stay with Aaron to help with Eliza. And she woke up to go get her up to take her to school. And she didn't wake up. And my mom went in Aaron's room and said, Eliza won't wake up. And Aaron went in and she had passed away in her sleep. They said it's sudden unexplained death and epilepsy, which, I mean, Eliza took all her medication.
Yeah.
I didn't even really know about it. I didn't know that was a thing that they just were. And so I spent
you're my third mom that I've had on whose child died from sudden unexplained death and epilepsy. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No.
Number 3.
No.
In less than 100 episodes now. I have to say, I didn't even realize as common as it was, right? Because I've had many patients with epilepsy, but I haven't had many patients die. I recently just had one diagnosed that has epilepsy, and we've been treating her epilepsy for a long time, and she has a genetic disorder, and they recently found out that it has a really high association with sudden unexplained death and epilepsy. And now they are going to do surgery, even though there are going to be very likely high complication rates. But I thought after meeting all of you, I couldn't do anything but recommend that they get the surgery. You know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah. Because, and I don't even know if it's something that I wished I would have known more about.
I have asked people that question.
Yeah. It's such there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. Right.
And I called I called all of her doctors. I wanted someone to make sense of it for me. And I said, well, if my husband would have checked her in the middle of the night, could that have helped? Or what if I would have been sleeping next to her? And they were like,
nothing.
There's nothing. You wouldn't. What if we would have done CPR? What if Aaron would have and there's nothing you can do. And it's sort of, it's such a helpless feeling. And I mean, we all know it. You feel helpless because we're supposed to protect our children.
Yeah.
And there's
the last mom I had talked to, her daughter was about 20 and she was sure that she probably hadn't been taking her medication, right? Because she had just come home to visit and she did die at home, but she was like, I bet she wasn't taking her medicine. And everything came back, perfect levels of all her seizure meds. There's just absolutely nothing because you just want there to be something that you could have done. Yeah. Right. And I do feel I'm happy for my family that there is an option of doing surgical things, even though, there are going to be bad things with that too, but at least they have an option because most people just don't at all. You just don't.
Right. And we loved our neurologist, but she didn't talk a lot about SUDEP. And why would she? I mean, if there's nothing you can do to prevent it, it's I think it's sort of like SIDS, where there's just really no explanation. They don't really even know what happens.
Right.
So,
right. And so I think you're right in that neurologist is it smart they didn't tell you or not? But likely it was because you would have just lived in even more fear every single day. Is today going to be the day she doesn't wake up? Right.
Right. I can't imagine living like that.
No, I know.
So, I mean, I dug in, I tried to figure things out because there was nothing else I could do except like get my mind to work like, okay, wait, what if? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you know, I think she suffered more than maybe I wanted to believe. I think no child wants to spend 6 weeks in the PICU, you know, during the summer. That's terrible. And she spent a lot of days in therapy, just speech therapy, occupational, physical therapy, all of those things. And, you know, that was in the foreseeable future, that was going to be her life. And so I could never have imagined that I would lose a child, just like I'm sure you could never have imagined. No, and it's not anything, there's really nothing that compares to that. And it's just so different than losing anybody else. Mm-hmm. It's part of you. It really is part of you.
Yeah. And I think that is the difference right there. It's part of you. And
there's no comparing to it. And I feel like people respect that. And, you know, there's occasionally the person that will say, and I'm going to use this as an example because it just happened. They'll say something like, and I think you did a podcast about this, how many children do you have? And I don't have any more children. It was only Eliza. So I will say, well, I have one. She passed away. She was 4.5. And so this recently happened. And I said she was 4.5. She passed away. And she said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I know how that feels. I had a miscarriage and it was really hard. And I was like,
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to have to pause you for a second because I have the Coast Guard helicopter flying over. If you'll notice, I'm in my backyard up in northern Michigan at our cottage, and it's beautiful up here, but the birds can be a little loud, and occasionally the Coast Guard flies over. So that would be that Coast Guard. All right. So I didn't hear any of that at all. So what did she say?
Okay. So I told her that Eliza had passed away. She was 4.5 years old. Mm-hmm. And she said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I know how painful that is. I had a miscarriage and it was extremely painful. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to respect that was painful for her. That's her story. But there's always a little something where I'm like, let's just not.
Just say. You're right. It's hard to compare, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to compare.
And I know that's just some people just want to feel like they're connecting with you, but there's always it's sort of like I've come to this place and I really try to work on it of comparing pain and grief. I'm like, I'm at the top and everybody else is here and it's terrible, but it's just, you want people to know how painful it is so that they can sort of, come alongside you and just, be a part of it and understand what you're going through, but nobody is going to ever understand. And that's sort of what I've had to come to realize.
Yeah. And even if you've lost a child, your grief is not exactly the same. I mean, even my husband and I, our grief is not exactly the same. And we're both parents of the same child who died, and our grief is different. So if our grief can be different, then certainly my grief is different than yours and is different from everybody else's. It's just kind of getting that understanding that for all of us, it's the worst thing we've ever experienced. And for the woman who had the miscarriage, that is the worst thing she's ever experienced for sure. Right. So yeah, it's hard not to compare sometimes, but I think it's good when you can hit that point and you can go, you know what, I'm not going to anymore. Right. Just know that it's just awful. And
and that's interesting because someone very early on, a therapist told me and my husband, you have to respect how each of you grieves because it's going to be so different. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I'm like, it's not going to be that different. It's so different. It's shocking how different. It's like, are we in the same life? Is this the same life? Because it's just, I think there's a different connection between a mother and child than there is with a father and child. I just think there's it's just different. Mm-hmm. And so we grieve differently.
Mm-hmm. And our relationships were different, right? It wasn't the same. My relationship is different with my 3 children even. So,
right.
I would grieve all of them, each of them differently in many ways, and not one more or less than another for sure. But all of the grief would be different because we have a different relationship because they're a unique individual. So, yeah.
Right.
So in that immediate time afterwards, I mean, there just must have been a lot. You just having to get home. And how even was that? Like you were with girlfriends, right?
I was with girlfriends. And so it's amazing how like my community, my friends came together here in Virginia Beach when it happened to get me home, because it was, I'm as far, west as you can go. So it was going to take a long time. So a girlfriend called one of my friends that was in the room with us, and I was like crazed. Like the security had to come. It was terrible. And my friend said, there's a flight. We have 2 tickets for you to fly with Aimee. Get to the airport. You're flying Delta, leaving in 2 hours. Get there, blah, blah, blah. So we're just like throwing things in bags. I really don't. It's shocking how little I remember, but then there are these little things that are so clear. Mm-hmm. So they are wheelchairing me through the casino. It was like so surreal. I'm in Vegas, like the craziest place to be.
Yeah, is
in a smoky casino. I am like I just kept saying, I want to die. I just want to die. And
I'm sure in your mind, I just think about even myself. I wanted the world to end. And in some ways, I wanted every person to know that the world had ended because Andy was dead. And like the world should not be going on. So for you to be in this casino, which is like, all happy and everybody's crazy and having fun, right? And that's the whole thing you're supposed to do in Las Vegas and having fun. You're like, do you not understand? The world is over right now. You all should stop. Right? You all should stop.
I told everybody that if someone said, no, my baby died. And they would be like, and I'm like, I don't care if I'm shocking you right now.
I know.
I'm telling everybody.
I was exactly the same way. Like my child is dead. My son is dead.
Yeah.
Like, why are you telling perfect strangers that your son is dead? Because I was like, because the world is over. And they shouldn't be going around and having a happy moment right now. Like I didn't want anyone to be happy.
100%. They got me on the flight, and I was sitting with my friend, and I was I don't even know what I was, but I just remember so many people were looking, and I was just saying, my baby died, and people were like very shocked. I could tell, but I was okay with it.
Yeah.
My defendant came up to me and said, I am so sorry. I just have to ask you have to calm down because they won't let us take off until you're like, and I was like, what? So I like had to keep it together on this flight. And so many things happened on this journey home. Just so much kindness that I experienced from strangers that I will never forget. The lady who's wheeling me through the airport, just praying over me when we got to Atlanta. The stranger, this man coming up to me and asking me if he could get me a cup of tea. I got on the flight. So we flew to Atlanta. We had a layover and then we got back on the flight, and Atlanta to Virginia Beach is an hour. I sat down, my girlfriend was on one side, and this lady came and sat next to me, and I was in the middle. And she goes, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And I said, my daughter died. And she went, and she like took a deep breath, and she gets her headset on, puts her phone, gets ready, and she grabs my hand, and she just held my hand the entire flight. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and crazy enough, she lived in Virginia Beach. And a few years later, I was in a store. She walked up to me and she was like, "I sat next to you on the flight that your daughter died." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "How do you remember me?" She's like, "I will never forget your face, ever." And I was like, just the fact that like stuck with her. And it just shows like humans and how, we always see all the bad, and mm-hmm. we look at the news and see all the terrible things that people do. And there's just still so much good. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're going through something that horrifying, to be able to like find some good is such a blessing. Mm-hmm. And I was able to, I had these friends who, when I was getting off the flight, my brother and my best friend's husband were standing, waiting at the plane. Like they bought one-way refundable tickets, because they wouldn't let them through security unless they had a ticket.
Sure.
And they were like, "But my sister," they were like, "Sorry." Yeah. So they bought one-way refundable tickets so that they could stand there. They literally just had a plan. The car was outside. Someone got my bags, and they just took me straight to the funeral home where Eliza was. So, I always say that my friends could like rule the world because they did a really good job of making it as easy as possible for me when I got back. But it was a crazy journey. And I would never, just like I said in the beginning, it took us weeks to pick a date for us to leave for the girls' trip. And it's just, wait, what are the chances that would be the weekend? It's just, and I definitely believe that, I wasn't supposed to be there to find Eliza.
Yeah.
I
was wondering that too.
How, I don't know if I would have ever been able to, that's, for me, that seems like a really bad place to be. I don't know how well I would have done. I'm not good under extremes like that. And my husband is really good. Yeah. And I just tend to freak. And I can only imagine what that would have been like. So,
well, and I think that same thing too, in that in the car accident, I lost consciousness and Eric didn't. And in some ways it was like Eric needed to try. Eric needed to do CPR on his son and try, because that's what he does, right? He's an anesthesiologist. He does that for a living. If he wouldn't have had a chance to try, I'm not sure he would have been able to forgive himself, right?
Yeah.
And I needed him to try because I know he would do it better than me. And especially in that circumstance, would I have been able to do compressions and rescue breathing on my baby? I don't know that I would have, but I know that Eric did, and did the best that he could. So, I wish I could have held him one more time for sure. Right. But in the grand scheme of things, it probably was the best that the person that needed to try did. And the person, me, who really couldn't. I couldn't, because I wasn't even conscious. So I couldn't. So,
and that's the same.
See him like that. Right. And and it was probably for the best. Although so much of me wished, like, how could I not? You were physically not there, so I'm sure that's you. And for me, it was like, I was physically there, but I was unconscious. Like, what, like I'm almost not forgiving myself for not being aware. Right.
I'm like, how could I not have been there?
Right.
Because there's always a little something that thinks, if I would have been there, would things have been different?
Right.
I always checked her 3 or 4 times a night. And then I'm like, I could like beat myself up about this for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But Aaron did CPR. I would not have been able to do CPR.
Mm-hmm.
He was the best, and he's the fixer, and he's the one. So I would have probably beat myself up if I wouldn't have done it right and thought that that's the reason that, there's all these, it can eat you alive. Just all of the like wondering what if.
Yeah. The what if,
those
what if,
are
what
really
if.
hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are really hard.
Those are really, really hard. So I'm glad that you had someone like by your side all of that time. So how long did it take you to get back then?
Oh, we left at like 10. Oh, we left at like 8 in the morning. So 11 o'clock East Coast time. And I got to the funeral home around 7 p.m.
Okay.
And then, I don't think anything will ever prepare you for that.
No.
Right?
No.
I mean, I don't think that people realize the hardest thing for me was leaving. Like, you're leaving your baby.
Yeah.
Like, it was her body. People they said they thought they were saying the right thing. It's just her body. I'm like, no, this is my baby. So I was terrified to walk into that funeral home. I was like, I don't even think I can do this.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and then I was like, I can't do this. Like but I wanted to so bad. I wanted to like touch her.
Yeah.
And when I got up to her, it was, I remember it so clearly of like, I think I'm going to throw up. This is not happening to me. I couldn't believe that this was my life. Yeah. I wanted to die so bad. I remember praying in the plane, please let this plane crash. I can't live. Like the feeling of having to live is like, wait, this is just not ever, I can't. Right. And I wondered if other people felt like that. Mm-hmm. Like you want to die.
Absolutely. You do feel that way. It's like, not that you're going to actively kill yourself, but like you're not going to kill yourself, but gosh, if this plane went down right now, that'd be great.
I'm good. Or if I wasn't going to do something to myself.
Right. You weren't actively suicidal.
I just wanted to disappear. I wanted to disappear. And
my husband called it my soft death wish.
Yes, soft. That is so good.
Yeah, right. Right, because I'm not going to actively do something, but do I have a little bit of a death wish? Yeah. Because after a while, he was like, I need you to stop having the soft death wish. I can't let you talk about it anymore. So like, okay, we will not be talking about it.
Okay. So seeing your child, that is something you can't get out of your head. And then leaving and just like wondering and it's
I know my therapist had said to me, every mom, so she really exclusively sees bereaved mothers. That's like her entire practice is seeing bereaved mothers. And she said she has never seen somebody that didn't want to know exactly what happened. Like you need to know exactly what happened. And other types of loss isn't that same way, but a mother always wants to know to the detail exactly what happened to their child. So I found that really, it was interesting.
Really,
yeah. And it was nice for her to tell me that, because it made me feel more normal, because I was so upset with myself over that lost 30 minutes that I don't remember. Like what happened? I want to remember. I want to know, because part of that I was actually conscious, because when I came to, I was sitting on the side of the road and my husband was there, and I clearly didn't know what was going on. And he was looking at me like, how do you not know what was going on? Because I'd been awake, but I have memory loss, so.
Were your other three kids in the car?
Only one of them.
Okay.
My son, Peter, the younger one. We were just going to this baseball game. My older daughter had a violin lesson, so she didn't go. And then my foster son was working, so he didn't go. But I do have to say, had they been in the car, I would have lost 3 because the entire back, we were in a minivan and the entire back was completely crushed and there would have been 0 chance of anyone in the back surviving. So, I mean, thank goodness they weren't in the car because I know I would have lost 3 of them and not 1. So, yeah. One is bad enough. One is bad enough.
I found myself reading books about child loss, about, I read Rare Bird, who I listened to that podcast.
I love that. Love her.
She's awesome. And I wanted to connect with other moms who had lost children so badly. And I just wanted to not feel as alone. And so I read about Jack and I don't know, there's something, it's like, I feel like I know her story so well from reading that book and going through all the different things and talking about when her husband like went to the museum and she was like, how could you go to a museum when we just lost our child? And I was like, right. I know. My husband wanted to go to the movies. I was like, what? Eliza just died 2 days ago. What are you talking about? Yeah. And so just to be able to hear other moms' stories has just been life-saving to me, honestly. I mean, even just you telling me that moms want to know details. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not alone.
And that's why, and that's why you wanted to know. You wanted to know absolutely every single thing. What could I possibly have done? Is there anything that could have changed this? You needed to know that.
Right.
I remember Gwen saying something to me about how difficult it is to feel powerless. You know, how that is so hard to feel powerless. And you would rather almost feel some guilt, like there's something that you missed, than to accept the fact that you're completely powerless in this situation.
That is so good. Yeah. It's like, if I know that I did something or didn't do something, it will make more sense to me. Than just, I had no power and I never did.
Right.
I think
and
that's
especially because that's accepting that you are powerless in this situation. That means you're powerless in 100 more situations in the future. Yeah. And you can't prevent any of that either. And that's so scary because you really want to feel like you've got a little bit of control, right? And that maybe you messed up somehow. If I messed up, then okay, then I won't do it again. And I won't lose something else super precious to me again.
Right. And I mean, that's a hard place to sit because we spend our whole lives with this, we're going to, our child is born, they're going to go to school, they're going to graduate, they're going to go to college, they're going to get married, it's all planned out. That's what we think. And then one day we're like, wait, that might not happen. It might not be just like we imagined. And I think they don't teach that. That doesn't come in a guidebook of okay, here are your plans and this is what we want to happen, but it might not happen like that. Yeah. And that's hard. That's really hard.
That is hard. And like we had said earlier about, would you have wanted to know that SUDEP really existed or not? That's the thing too. Do you really want to live thinking, oh, this might not turn out? Right. My child could die any day. And then all of this thoughts that I had of being a grandparent and all of this is gone. I mean, do you want to live like that? Not really. I don't really want other people to live like that either. It's just hard.
When I had, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was terrified I was going to die and that I was going to leave my new baby. And I was talking to my friend's dad and he said, he said, you're no closer to dying today than you were a week ago. You could just cross the street and like get hit by a car. It's all relative, really. Yes, you have this diagnosis, but you know, that might not be what's going to take you out. It could be you just walking across the street tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that kind of really does. I mean, nobody's promised tomorrow. And I think that's the hardest thing that I've had to learn is none of us are promised tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I think when it's your child, I think that's when it gets a little trickier because you're not supposed to outlive your child.
No.
And I can accept my own mortality a lot better than I can accept my child's. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's just shown me so many things that we are taught and that we learn, and it just by osmosis, not even that someone really teaches us, but just about being powerless and you know, thinking that everything's going to turn out the way we want it to turn out when that is not the case. And we spend so many days and researching pacifiers and what kind of bottle, and do we use this diaper? Do we use this crib? And really, it isn't going to matter. I read this thing where it was just this little poem thing that about a mom in Target, pregnant mom in Target, and looking up at all of the different things that, you're going to need. Mm-hmm. And the woman looking at her is like, it doesn't matter. It's not going to make any difference. That pacifier, that, formula, if you breastfeed, all of those things are good or they're, better than the other, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, I did do everything right.
Yeah.
For the most part. And it didn't change anything.
I know. And
I think that's where you just really have to come to terms with and realize okay, I was the best mom that I could be. Yeah. And now I just have to do my best to keep my daughter's memory alive.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we talk about that now, about how you're keeping Eliza's memory alive? Because I think it's pretty amazing what you've been doing.
Thank you. So we don't have any other children. So when Eliza passed away, it was just a couple days after. And I was like, I have to do something. She can't be forgotten. I want everybody to know that she was here. And far after I'm gone. So I just thought about it and I was like, the one thing that we really lacked was a community when Eliza was diagnosed with autism. Mm-hmm. And there's just so many misconceptions about autism. And there's just so many, there's just so much that goes along with an autism diagnosis. I mean, it's a spectrum. Yes, we all know that it's a spectrum, but I don't, I always had in my mind, it's children that don't make eye contact. They don't want to be touched. And that's really not it. Eliza loved to be touched and squeezed and hugged. She would want to be hugged all day, which is my love language.
Yeah. I love that you talked about Eliza in that way because you are 100% right. That is not what people think about when they think of autism because it's just is such a wide variety. And I bet that woman at Home Depot, when she said hi and gave her a hug, if you would have asked that woman, do you think this child has autism? She would have said, no.
Absolutely
right?
Not.
No way.
Absolutely.
Because that's not what in her mind it is. So I love that you kind of expanded that because it's not a narrow diagnosis. It's really so inclusive.
It really isn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she would make eye contact. And, there's just, and I was just the same. I didn't know because it's okay, here's the list. And if that you could check, yes, then they have autism, but that's not really accurate. So, when Eliza was diagnosed, we took her to the neurologist, and they gave us a paper and gave us a prescription for ABA therapy, which is behavioral therapy. And then they gave us a list of like 30 different providers of ABA therapy. And I was like, I don't even know what this means. Like, right. I literally have never heard of this. He's like, it's the type of therapy that works really well with children with autism. And I was like, okay. So you're just like looking at this list, like, I don't know, who are these people? Like, I have literally no clue. I don't know who to call. I know she needs speech, she needs OT, she needs PT, and she needs ABA therapy. Like, I don't know anything about any of these things. So to me, I felt like it was so important to be able to help moms like me and to help families like ours. And I spent so many Saturdays being so jealous of families that were taking their kids to soccer or taking their kids to dance or any of those things, because I didn't have that. There's a lot of special needs programs that say they're for kids with special needs, but there's a very big difference from Eliza to, you know, another child with special needs. She needed one-on-one, like hand over hand. So I wanted to create a center that was beautiful, that didn't look like a doctor's office, that a child can come and get all their therapy, ABA, OT, PT, speech, and social skills all in one center. And that parents can come when they get a diagnosis and they can sit across from me, and every one of them is like, we have no idea what to do. And I'm like, I know. And you don't, and you shouldn't know what to do. So right. I am going to help you. So we have our CHKD is our children's hospital here, and their neurology department will refer people to us for when they get diagnosed. We see 4 or 5 new families a week, and we're growing, and we're outgrowing our space. And we're opening a center in Richmond, which is about an hour and a half from Virginia Beach. And it's done so much good for our community. We see about 150 kids a week in and out for different therapies. And all of the therapists that work here all were Eliza's therapists at one point or another. And they came alongside when I said that this is what I wanted to do. So I'm sure you know this, but when your child dies, everybody wants to help somehow. They want to raise money for you, or they want to make you food, or do all of those things. And so they were like, some friends were like, well, people want to like give money. And I'm like, I don't want to take people's money for like, we've got the funeral, like it's, and then I'm like, wait, well, why don't they can raise money? They can give money towards this foundation that I want to build. So this was like day 5. I feel like I'm just going to go out and say, I feel like I had some superhuman strength at that time to even come up with, give money to this foundation that I'm going to start. Like crazy.
That does not even exist yet. So, yes.
Right. That doesn't even exist. And we ended up raising $60,000. So that was sort of like the seed money. And it sort of like got me to like, okay, well, now I have people who believe in this. So now I really have to do it. So we got our 501c3 about 4 months after Eliza died. And then about a year and a half after that, we opened up the center here in Virginia Beach.
And
really,
what's the name of the center?
Really,
I love it.
It's the Eliza Hope Therapy Center.
I know. I love that name. I wanted you to say it though.
Thank you. It's so good. My big thing was I had this like vision of this big sign that had Eliza's name on it on a building from the very first day. And so we worked with, the sign company. I made it the way I wanted it to look. And they said, so we were having a ribbon cutting ceremony, and they said, okay, we'll do it the day before the ribbon cutting ceremony. And I was like, okay. So a few days before, I was driving to the center, and my friend Shelly, who is the director of all of this, she called and said, hey, can you stop? And like, she was trying to stall me basically. So she stalled me, and then I pull up and I look and the sign was up, and I just sobbed. I was like, there it is. I like did this. Like, the Eliza Hope Therapy Center has a big sign and it's going to light up at night. So I get out of the car and I'm sobbing and I hug Shelly, and the two men that were like putting up the sign, they're standing there, and I like hugged them, and I know they were like, what is going on here? Why is this lady hugging us? But it was just such a like full circle moment for me, where I got to like see her name up there and know that in so many ways, she was going to change people's lives. And that's really like all that I hoped for.
Yeah.
And I think if I can say that she changed one child's life, that makes me happy. And I just know that she's changed so many more.
Yeah. It's just such a beautiful thing. I just love the whole idea of it. And I mean, as a pediatrician, a few years ago, our office actually decided to hire 2 nurses now we have in our office that are complex care coordinators, and they help families. So like your family that would get a diagnosis like that, then they're the point person in our office, because I did feel like I was at a loss. And you do have to just give this list of names, and then they have to do it all. And so now I can give these women's names and say, if you call the office, I need you to talk to them, and they're going to walk you through this and get you the people you need. That's what we have to do in our office, as kind of
perfect.
Well, we do that because we don't have something like what you have.
Well, right.
I mean, it would be even better to be able to say, I'm going to send you to this amazing, awesome place that's going to teach you all about your child's diagnosis, plus give your child every single therapy they could possibly need. I mean, wow, what a gift. What a gift.
Yes, it is. I mean, I've talked to so many parents that are like, this has changed our lives. This has been, and I'm like, whew, like, it has. And I know it would have for me too. And we started a Hope Stars League, and it's soccer, basketball. It's all the different sports we do every, 12 weeks. And the first soccer, we started it last fall, and we started with soccer. And I wanted parents to just be able to sit on the sidelines and watch their kids, and have enough volunteers that the parents didn't have to come in and like run after their child, because that's really what we just do. We just run after our child. And so we had enough, and I just got to see these parents just like relax and see their child doing something that they might not ever have gotten the opportunity to do. And it was huge. The news came. It was like the most amazing thing. And giving them their little trophies at the end, I mean, it's so life-changing for everybody, for not just the kids, because the kids, they like the trophy, but it's fine. Yeah. The parents, though, and the volunteers are so changed by that experience to see, okay, not every family is the same. And this is a hard road. And so when you see families like ours out in the community, you get a little glimpse of this, and you're like, okay, I get it. I can understand it a little better now.
Yeah. Yeah. What a gift, though, that you're just giving them. It's just so, so beautiful and amazing. And I hope you keep expanding. Going to Richmond now. So how many therapists do you have on staff?
Well, we have probably about 16.
Oh my word. It's just amazing. It does show that there's such a need. And the other thing I was thinking about is, when you're a healthcare provider doing this, you have to, you give these recommendations, and then all of them take different insurance. So that's always a huge problem too. Like, well, what insurance do you have? Oh, you're this insurance, you can go here, but you can't go here, and you can't. So that is such a beautiful thing too, to be able to just know that you're going to be at one place, so you don't have to jockey around based on what your insurance is.
Right.
No?
Right.
I don't know.
We want it just to be easy for for parents, because there's so many more things that are going to be difficult. Like, let's just take this off their plate and make sure that we have the best therapists and the best space and the best volunteers, so they don't have to worry about that.
Well, I just love what you're doing. You are 100% keeping Eliza's memory alive for today and long, long into the future, because this is going to go on for a long, long time. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for writing to me and sharing, because I am so blessed. I am so blessed to be able to share Eliza's story like this. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm so glad that I got to get a glimpse of Andy's life too.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.